Hello, welcome to another Q&A session. Today's session is really great, packed full of very useful questions. Let's get started. The first question is, how has your experience been with pests and plants in Leca? I would love to know more about how you prevent pests for your plants in Leca. So as you know, one of the great advantages of using Leca for growing your houseplants is that you don't have as many pests as you normally would when you're growing your plants in soil. So how do you prevent? The first thing I do when I've got a plant that's living in soil and I want to transfer it to Leca is give it a good wash. I'm doing this as I'm getting rid of all the soil off the roots. I give the whole plant a good wash, and I like to use pure Castile soap. So I've got a soap like this one. This is a Dr. Bronner's. This is a Castile soap, and it's a peppermint one. I think this is a peppermint one, yes, and peppermint is really good as well. That also helps with pest prevention. This is a very mild soap, and I dilute it 1 tablespoon to about 1 liter of water. So slightly warm water. I'm not wanting to shock the plant by having very cold water. And I just grab the whole plant and I just rinse it in this solution. So if there's any pests that are still hitchhiking on the plant, that is going to sort that out. This is a normal detergent that you would use for washing your dishes. I would refrain from using this because it is quite harsh and can be damaging to your plants. So this is easily found, easily available at Amazon, everywhere, and it's mild and it lasts a really long time. That's my bottle. I've only used that much and I've had it for over a year. So, you know, it really helps to just get the plant as clean as you possibly can from the very beginning. The next thing that's really important is quarantining. You must quarantine any new plants that you bring into your home. You would, ideally you'd like to do it for at least a few weeks, so 3 to 4 weeks. You're keeping that plant away from all the other plants. So if it does have any pests, you'll be able to see those manifesting and sort that out quickly. But what that also does is that if it does have any pests, those pests are not spreading to the rest of your plant population. So what do I do when I get pests on my plants living in Leca? Since I've had my plants living in Leca, I've had to deal with spider mites, I've had to deal with mealybugs. I think these are the only 2 that I can actually remember. Fungus as well, fungal infections. So when I do get that, I've got some products that I use. So this is a fungal product. It's a rose garden and it works on black spot and insects. That's black spot, powdery mildew, aphids, spider mites, and thrips. So I use that sometimes, and this is a great product called Confidor, and again that will work on mealybugs, beetles, aphids, thrips. So, what I like to do when I do see something, I like to confirm the diagnosis. Is this what I think it is? And if I'm not sure, I've got a few people that I can depend on, horticulturalists and, really more informed people than I am on Instagram and other places. And I'll ask them, or, what's happening? What pest is this? And they'll advise me on what the best thing is to do or to use. But one really important thing, as you're treating your plants for pests, make sure you don't keep using the same chemical compound. So if you've had an outbreak of spider mites, for example, and you use that, and that clears it off, the next time you get spider mites, don't use that. Use something else, because they do tend to gather resistance. So you don't want your pests to be resistant to the chemicals that you're using. So just mix your chemicals around. But again, like I said, when in doubt, please consult the expert. I know lots of horticultural people, like in garden centers and places like that, are more than happy to help with any questions that you might have. So use them. Thank you for that question. Next question is about cleaning Leca. And this question says, I've cleaned my Leca and soaked it initially for 24 hours. Is it a good idea to then soak that Leca in a nutrient solution? So when I get my Leca, if I'm getting the Leca straight out of the bag and it's still got all that Leca dust on it, I will take it outside, give it a good wash until I can get the water running as clear as I possibly can. And then when that is done, I might soak it for 24 hours just in water. And that just removes as much of the clay crud that is possibly there. And then I'll clean that off again. And then I will get that leca and soak it in my Clonix clone solution. And this is my Clonix clone solution. It just helps with rooting. You can use anything if you don't have this, just any solution that's going to help your plants root. And the reason I do this is because this Clonix clone solution is then going to be embedded in that leca. The leca is going to absorb that and is going to be primed for wicking that solution to the roots immediately I put my plant in that leca. If it's leca that I have used from another plant, that's been used for another plant, I'll boil it, sterilize it, and then I'll just put that in the Clonix clone solution. It's already wet, it's already clean, so I don't need to do that initial 24-hour soak in just water. One of the things I have noticed when I have soaked my leca a lot longer, so 1, 2, 3 soaks before I use it, is I don't have to flush as much. And the reason I don't have to flush as much is because a lot of that clay residue has actually come out of the leca during the soaking process. So it's always a good idea. I mean, if you can soak your leca for as long as you can, do that. Then you won't have to be doing too much flushing because you're not going to have so much residue accumulating at the bottom of that reservoir. Once the leca has been cleaned and soaked, does that mean irrespective of when you want to use it, it's ready to use? Should you just re-wet them? Once your leca has been cleaned, it's been washed, it's been soaking for 24 hours. Depending on how many plants you've got, how much plant care you do, you might want to just put it in, a box or something and it'll dry off and that leca is clean. You will need to re-soak it for at least 24 hours so that it can become wet again. Now, I use leca a lot. I'm constantly upgrading pots, changing leca over and things like that. So I do have a bucket that just with leca that just sits in nutrient solution. So when I need to use it, it's there. I don't have to wait for 24 hours before I have to do plant care. So that's something to think about. If you do use leca a lot, you might want to have a little bucket where you've got leca that's absolutely ready to go. But if you don't and you've cleaned out your leca, you can just store it in a tub or wherever you want to store it. And then when you know that you need to do something with your leca in the next few days, you will re-wet that leca. And you want to do that. Why? The reason you want that leca to be absolutely wet is that leca works by capillary action. It will be in touch with the nutrient solution and it will start to soak up that water and that nutrient solution. One ball will suck it up, pass it on to the next ball, pass it on to the next ball, and then that gets in contact with the roots, and that's how your plant derives nutrition and water. If you use dry leca balls, leca is looking for moisture. It will get moisture from wherever it can. So imagine you've got a dry leca ball here and you've got your root that's next to it. Your root is moist because the plant already has moisture in it. So that leca ball is going to start sucking the moisture out of your root and your plant is not going to do well because it's going to get dry. So you want the leca to be primed, and that's why I talk about priming the leca all the time. You want it to be ready to do the job that it's supposed to do and get the nutrient and the water from the reservoir going to the roots and not the other way around. So you must make sure that your leca is moist. Let's do a plant update. Someone would like to know if there are any Melanochrysum updates. I'll bring you my Melanochrysum and we'll take a look. This here is my Melanochrysum. It is now up on a 2-meter high moss pole. I had to extend the moss pole. This is the latest leaf that has come through. She's got a new leaf coming through over there. So she's doing really, really well. The thing about this moss pole, however, is it's one vine has gone really, really tall, and the rest of the plant is right there at the bottom. So if you look here, this is that one vine that's gone all the way up to the top, and that's why I needed to extend the moss pole. But then you've got this other vine over here, and not much has happened there, and that's still climbing up. So this one has got really big leaves coming up from there. So I'm hoping that this vine is now going to catch up with the other one, get bigger leaves, and that's going to work out really, really well. So that right there is my Melanochrysum doing some very weird things. Look at that. The sheen on that is absolutely glorious. I just love how that is looking. And I love how when you look at the leaves are actually getting bigger. They are getting bigger. It has been winter in Melbourne. Things have been a bit slow. My plants weren't getting as much light as they were used to. I've got grow lights on them now, and you can see that the internodal space is actually getting shorter. It was a very big space between one leaf and the other, but you can see now this new leaf is coming out right next to the old one. So I'm very excited about the progress of this Melanochrysum, and I think it's going to do very, very well. Next question, do you have a bird of paradise growing in Leca? And the answer is indeed I do. This is my bird of paradise. There's a new leaf that's come there. It's living in Leca in I think that's 17 centimeters, in a 17 centimeter pot, and it's doing really well. So that's the plant there. There's 3 leaves on it. I've been transitioning this plant from soil to Leca for the best part of a year. Things have been a bit difficult. They did not go according to plan, but I've got this new leaf here, and I think this plant has definitely taken the corner and is doing well. I've got this stake here just to help those leaves not be so floppy. And I'll show that to you again. That is my new leaf over there. And it's absolutely beautiful. It's a lot smaller than the other leaves have been, but I think the fact that we have a new leaf even is a good sign. So I think this plant is going to do very, very well. The next question is, you mentioned adding another plant to a plant that's already established in Leca. Can you show how you do this? Do you just remove the Leca from the pot and restart with both? Yes, that is something that I like to do when especially I want to bulk up a plant. I want to make it look a bit more bushy. Maybe I've only got one plant in the pot and I want it to look really fab. I'll put another plant in there or 2 more plants in there. It just depends on how I feel and if I have another plant. I'll use my Syngonium Fantasy to demonstrate how I do this. This is my Syngonium Fantasy. She's absolutely beautiful. I love how she looks right now. Just look at those variegated leaves. It looks absolutely awesome. This plant didn't always look this way. I've actually had to make it bushier, and I'd like it to get bushier still. If you click on the link above, there's a video where I show how I get it to look like this, but I will want to put another plant in there. I got this Syngonium Fantasy. It is mottled and it just looks absolutely divine. When I got this cutting, I put it through the long method. So that means I put it in a solution of Clonix Clone Solution and Root Zone just to make sure that those roots are primed for its new hydro environment. Now I know Syngoniums are really, really great at living in Leca, so I have no issues whatsoever moving this plant from its old environment into a Leca environment. I can make this a separate plant and that will look really good. Then I'll have 2 Syngonium Fantasies. But I have a bit of a space issue in my home. So instead of doing that, I've decided I'm going to put this cutting into that pot. I'll show you how I do that now. Let's go down. I'm going to take this plant out of the Leca. I want to show you what the roots are doing. That's what its roots are doing. Look at that. They're absolutely healthy. This plant is loving the Leca. I will now grab my cutting and attach it to this plant. So I'm just going to make sure that the cutting is, I'll put it there in the middle, making sure that the roots are with all the other roots. I've got my Velcro plant tied there, and I'm going to make sure that this is nicely secured to this moss pole, which it is there. So that is my new cutting over there, and those are its roots over there. And I will now put this back in its pot. I don't need to change the leca over. There's nothing wrong with this leca. It's absolutely fine. Just gonna stand that like that and simply put the leca back. That is now my Syngonium Fantasy with its new cutting in there, and it's going to look absolutely fabulous. I just cannot wait for the growing season. I will be extending that moss pole pretty soon, but that is how, so that's my cutting there, and that's how you just add on to a moss pole or a plant that's living in leca. Simply take it out and put the new one in. There you go. Next question is a very interesting question. How can I know if it's fungi in my soil, and if I leave it out in the sun, will that kill it? Will the fungi die? Very interesting question. Unfortunately, I'm not able to show you a plant in my collection that's got fungi growing on the soil because A, I don't use soil, and B, I don't use soil. But I've got a picture up here that shows what white fungi on a plant looks like. And there's so many different kinds of fungi. So you've got white fungi, you can have green fungi, yellow fungi, and so on. But the more common one is the white one. That's where you see all these little fuzzies on top of your soil. Now, in and of themselves, the fungi is not necessarily bad for your plant. They won't necessarily kill your plant unless you let them get so prolific and they start to compete for nutrition with your plants. The issue though is that fungi, which comes from the spores that are in your contaminated soil, grow because the conditions are good for it to grow. And what conditions are these? Too much moisture in the soil, not enough ventilation around the plant, light, not enough light. These things are bad for a plant even when it doesn't have fungi in it. So your plant will start to go down because these conditions are not conducive for a plant to grow, but then they also encourage fungi formation. How can you deal with fungus? So it entirely depends on what fungi you've got. So at this stage, we're assuming that it's the white version. So the first thing that you could do is some people will sort of just take off the top layer of the soil that's contaminated. I wouldn't even do that. I would just completely get rid of that soil and just bring in some new soil. And in fact, some people say, don't just take the soil and throw it out, like put it in a bag and get rid of it, because those spores can still spread all over the place. Of course, you could use a fungicide, a fungal spray like the one that I showed you earlier, which gets rid of fungus. So spray your plant like that as well. But really, the more important thing is prevention. Prevention is really what we want to be talking about. You want to prevent that from happening in the first place. There are a few things that you can do to prevent fungus from growing. First thing is you need to adjust your watering schedule. So you want to make sure you're watering when you need to be watering. So if you're not sure whether it's time for you to water, I highly recommend getting something like this. This is a moisture meter. You just dip it in your soil and it will tell you whether your soil is dry, in the middle, or absolutely wet. Bright light is very important in preventing fungal spores from germinating. It's great for your plants as well. So you want to make sure that your plants are getting some kind of sunlight at some point. And then of course you need to have a good potting mix. Have a potting mix that's well draining and well aerated, but accompanied with that, make sure that your pots have draining holes. So when you water, that water is coming out and not just sitting dead in your pot, and then that provides a good environment for those spores to germinate. Another really important aspect is to increase the ventilation around your plants. I know we all have space issues, especially when we've got lots of plants, but don't put too many plants in one small area. You need to have air going. Airflow is very important. And if you absolutely cannot have that naturally, get a small fan. A small fan will do, and you've just got this little breeze going and the air is not static, and that helps with prevention of germination. Another really, really important thing is you must remove dead leaves, dead debris that's sitting on top of your soil. So, you know, when a plant leaf dies and it just collapses onto the soil, don't leave that there, because fungi will start to grow in it. That's a source of food. So quickly remove any dead or dying material to prevent fungal growth. One last thing is, when you do have potting mix, make sure you're storing it in a nice, dry, cool place, again, to prevent germination of those spores and leading to fungi in your soil before you've even used it. Well, that was very, very interesting and very educational for me. I don't use soil, but you know, it's always good to learn something new. So there you go. I hope that was useful for you. And remember, prevention is really what we're going for here. Next question. I just transferred some plants into Leca, but now they're yellowing at the edges. I transferred them from soil. Should I cut the soil roots and start from the beginning like a propagation? So the plants that this person is referring to is Calatheas and the Birkin. Ooh, it's really, really difficult for me to give an opinion on this because I haven't seen the plants. I know Calatheas can be a bit notorious, so I'll hold my comment there. It's very useful for me to be able to see the plant, and in that way I can give a more informed opinion. But certainly it wouldn't hurt to start all over again as a propagation. I would definitely recommend you do that. Next question. Recommendations for nutrient solutions when using Leca or during the transition from soil to Leca for people living in the United States. This is a question that comes up time and time again, and I'm so sorry. I cannot recommend something that I haven't used, especially something like a nutrient solution, because I just have no idea what it's going to do. But what I will say is, for those of you out watching who live in the United States and are using Leca, please write in the comment below what you're using, and I can mention that to people and say, look, this is what other people are using. I'm not sure how it works, but they say it works fine. But as for me giving you an actual recommendation, I really can't do that. All I can tell you is growth technology products are coming to America very, very soon. When they hit the ground, I will let you know. So watch this space. Any success transferring a nerve plant or a ficus to Leca? I have not got a ficus in Leca, and I don't have a nerve plant in Leca as well. I don't see that there should be any problems whatsoever. I know lots of people have done it and they're growing them successfully. So I would certainly recommend that you try it if these are plants that you're looking to grow. Next question. Are there plants that you recommend more for the long process, which is also the long method, instead of moving them directly from soil to Leca? So any plants that you absolutely want to keep alive, I would highly recommend doing the long method. And if you haven't seen the video where I talk about the long method, just click on the link above and that'll take you straight to it. I have some anthurium plants here. Look at that. They are just absolutely stunning, and I have them going through the long method at the moment because I just cannot lose these babies. I love them so much. They're expensive, and I want to make sure that transition goes really, really well. So they are going through the long method. Plants like ZZ plants, I would certainly not recommend, because you don't want to chuck a ZZ plant straight into a water solution. ZZs do not like water like that. So I've got my variegated ZZ plant here. Look at this gorgeous beauty. She's a variegated ZZ. I got her and I put her straight into Leca. Took the soil off, put it into Leca. That plant is alive. I lost 2 leaves, this one here and this one here. But to be fair, these were the really, really white leaves. So maybe they were going to go anyway. I don't know. But this plant has been in here for a couple of months now. It's one stalk, it's alive. So that has worked. So definitely plants that you're a lot more precious about, I would use the long method of transfer from soil to leca. The next question. I'm using your long method of converting from soil to leca for my Calathea. But do you think I need to do the same for house plants that I have had for years? I would certainly recommend that you use the long method for plants that you have had for a long time. Plants that have been living in soil for a longer time tend to be a lot bigger as well. So I would do a gentle introduction. So just making sure you clean off those roots, get rid of any roots that are not looking good, that are looking slightly gray, looking slightly black, get rid of them, put them in the nutrient solution, get those water roots going, and then move that plant to leca, because you've got a higher chance of a plant not doing very well in leca if it's a lot bigger and it's gotten used to its soil space, and then all of a sudden you just move it from home to something else. I mean, no one would like that. So give it a gentle introduction, and fingers crossed, all things should go well. Another question. I'm in the process of rinsing roots and getting the solution ready. I plan on keeping the plants in the nutrient solution for at least 2 weeks. Should I top off the solution when I check on the roots, or should I change the solution during this 2-week process? So the first thing I want to say to this question is it is not a 2-week process. There is no timeline put on the time from when you put your plant in the nutrient solution to when you move it to leca. It is entirely dependent on the plant and what the plant does when it's living in that solution. What we want is at least 1 inch or 2 of water roots that have formed before you move the plant from soil to leca. And I can tell you that's probably going to take longer than 2 weeks. These are the cuttings that I took of my Monstera adansonii monkey mask. And this is when I'm rehabilitating my plant because it was dying. If you haven't seen this video, click on the link above. And these cuttings I am going to put on a moss pole, but I wanted to get the water roots going. So if you look in there, you can see the white roots, which are the water roots. I'll take that out so you can have a better look. So this is one of the cuttings here. All the white roots, these are water roots that have formed while the plant's been in the nutrient solution. There's good length to that, but the other thing that I'm looking for is secondary roots. So I've got these ones that are tiny, tiny ones coming out of the main big root. So those are secondary roots. That root is well primed to go and live in leca at this point. That is another one. Secondary roots forming on my primary root. That is doing really well. I'll probably wait a bit longer because I'd want those roots to get just a little bit bigger before I transfer the plant from the nutrient solution to the leca. Just to recap, the really important thing about doing the long method is not how long it takes, it's about what those roots look like, and some plants take longer than others, so make that judgment call based on how long those roots are. The important thing as well though is don't just top up the nutrient solution, change it. You want to make sure you're changing that nutrient solution, because as the plant lives in that solution, it's depleting the oxygen, it's depleting the nutritional content of that solution, and the pH is changing the longer the plant stays there. And that is not an optimal space for a plant to develop roots and grow. So if you can change that at least every week, that will be absolutely fabulous, and you'll find that your roots will develop quicker than if you just let the plant sit there in that nutrient solution without changing it. Next question. Any thoughts on transferring a Birkin or a Cebu blue or a Mycans straight from soil to leca? I plan to propagate cuttings of each and use the long method just in case the direct propagation doesn't work. That is a very good idea. Getting an insurance policy with your plants is always a good idea because you just never know how that transition is going to go. Now, would I do a direct transfer from soil to leca? Yes, I would. A Birkin would go well. Cebu blue, maybe. Micans, maybe not so much. I find micans to be a little bit finicky, to be honest with you. But again, who knows? It could have been just that particular plant. Having said that, why take the risk is what I would say. Using the long method ensures that your plant has, and I say ensures that your plant has an easier transition from soil to leca. So if you can use the long method, I certainly encourage you to do that. But you could move them directly from soil to leca. That would work as well. Next question. Since I placed my Philodendron red emerald in leca, the growth is great, but I'm having issues with roots growing upwards. That is so funny. It does happen. It happens all the time. I had it happen with my Monstera Thai constellation. If you look over here, you'll see pictures of my Monstera Thai constellation, and you've got this root just going everywhere. And I've got a little video playing as well, and you can see those roots are just going insane and they're going every which way. I'll show you an Alocasia that's doing the same thing right now. This is my Alocasia bisma. Isn't she beautiful? She is so pretty, but look at that. These are the roots. I don't know where they're going. They just, sometimes, I don't know where they're going. Sometimes they do that. So all I do is when I get to the point of repotting or when I'm flushing or something, I just put a bit more leca on top, or I just reposition the plant. But you know, you could just leave it. It's absolutely fine. It's not hurting the plant at all. It's got so many other roots down there to help it do what it needs to do. But once you give it a repot, this is my Thai constellation here. Oh, big mama, my Thai constellation here. And as you can see, I've given her a repot and all its roots are now tucked in where they need to be. Next question. Have you ever used pots with a wicking cord? Also, how do I use the pots? How do I water when I'm using a pot that's got a wicking cord? Do I just put the water to the level of where the cord is, or do I put it all the way up to a third of the pot? This right here is my peace lily, that right there. You can see the wick right at the bottom, and the wicks are going into the nutrient solution and they are bringing the nutrient solution up to the leca. So that nutrient solution is not touching the leca at all. I've had this plant in this pot for a number of months now, and it absolutely loves it. I'm absolutely surprised, especially because it's a clear pot. What do I know? I thought there'd be heaps of algae in there, but there isn't. I'm still surprised. And there's a new leaf coming there. This plant is really, really happy. So I'm not sure what kind of pot you have, but the whole point of having the wick is that that wick is going to absorb the nutrient solution, and because it's sitting right next to the leca, that wick is going to transfer that nutrient solution to the leca, which is going to transfer it to the roots. So in theory, you would not need to have the leca in the nutrient solution itself. But again, having said that, I'm not sure what kind of pot you've got. It would help if I could see, then I could, give a more informed opinion. But, showing you what I have, you don't necessarily need to have that reservoir going all the way up to where the leca is. I hope that was helpful. A question about root zone. Is root zone commercially available yet? Is that the one that you've mentioned that's in the experimental phase? Root zone is a product that promotes root health and is one of the key ingredients of my special sauce. My special sauce, of course, which is Clonix Clone Solution and Root Zone. I use this for all my propagations and all my long method soil to leca transfers. Root Zone is not yet commercially available to the public. There are just a few select people who've been asked to try it and see how it works. I happen to be one of them, very fortunate, and I absolutely love the product. It's not yet available, and I am reliably informed that 2023 is the year. So watch this space. Next year, Root Zone will be available, and I will let you know when that happens. Can we have some tips on how to grow a Philodendron Mamei? I love questions about a Philodendron Mamei because it gives me an excuse to whack out my Philodendron Mamei like I ever needed one. I absolutely treasure this plant. New leaf there, new leaf coming, new leaf there. That's a new leaf there. This plant is thriving. It is absolutely thriving. Now, a few tips about growing a mamei. So the first thing is a Philodendron Mamei is a crawler. It's not a climber. So you will notice I have it growing in a rectangular pot. So you want it growing in a rectangular pot because it needs to crawl. It needs to go sideways, not up. So that's the first thing, have it in a rectangular pot. And of course, I will say having your plant in Leca goes a very long way because your plant has got constant nutrition, your plant has got constant water. So if you look at this plant, I never have to think, oh, do I need to fertilize it now? Do I need to water it now? Because it's living in Leca, it's got a constant supply of nutrition and water. It's always got food, it's always growing. Light, you need to give it some good indirect light and the plant will love you. Give it some light and it will thrive. I like to use a foliar spray on my plant as well. So a foliar spray is a nutrient or fertilizer that a plant absorbs through the foliage. So I spray that and the leaves absorb that fertilizer and it's just getting a maximum supply of food and it's doing so well. Of course, a Philodendron Mamei loves some humidity. So put it in a humid spot if you can. If you don't, if your home is so dry, think about investing in a humidifier. You can get a humidifier quite cheaply in a number of places. Not sure where you are. Kmart sell a lovely humidifier that I use, very, very well priced. You can get humidifiers on Amazon anywhere really. I remember when I started in house plants and I was looking for humidifier, I remembered when my children were babies, I had one of those Vicks vapor rub humidifier things. I grabbed that and that's what I was using. And so, you know, you can use anything. Group your plants together, that ups the humidity. Some people talk about using a tray of water. I don't know about that. I don't think that works very well. But look, just do anything that'll up the humidity of your plant and your plant will love you and your plant will thrive. So, you know, there's no secrets. That's all you need to do. Rectangular pot, light, food, water, humidity, bang, your mamei will love you and it will grow. Before we go to the next question, if you're liking this video, if you're finding value, if you're learning new things, please hit the like button. It really, really does help my channel. Consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you can be informed when I've got a new video out. On to the next question. Do Calatheas grow better in Leca instead of soil due to them liking humidity? Of course, I will say yes. I am the Leca Queen. Of course, I will say yes. And of course I have to do that. That is my Calathea orbifolia. Orbifolia is going so good, living in Leca in a 20 centimeter pot. Do I think Calatheas do better in Leca? I would say they do. I've got my little Calathea fasciata here. It's still very, very small. I'm really hoping to get this Calathea to look like this Calathea. Look at that leaf, it's bigger than my head. Bigger than my head. I do think they grow better in Leca. I do think that constant supply of nutrition, that constant supply of moisture and water really, really helps. But that humidity is so very important with Calatheas. If you can get them in a space where the humidity is a little bit higher, that would be fabulous. Humidifier if that doesn't work. But there, that's my little fasciata. And I've got a video where I show you how I repot that. Just click on the link above. And I'm really hoping that within the next 6 months, this plant will start to look like that one. That is a challenge I've given myself. I hope I can meet it. Next question. I have a Hawaiian golden pothos that I purchased online. The cutting is starting to turn yellow. Is this normal? And should I remove the yellowing to promote new growth? This is a question that's really hard to answer without having seen the plant, without having seen what conditions that cutting is living in, how it came to you, and so on. Sometimes it's really, really difficult to respond. But having said that, I do want to let you guys know about one of the tiers in my Patreon. So Patreon is a service that you can subscribe to, and that helps to support me and my channel. And it also works for you because you get certain perks. So you get advanced viewing on videos, you get specific polls, and one of the tiers, you actually get a personalized Zoom call with me. So I can actually look at your plant and we can discuss things that are specific for you and specific for the plant that you're actually showing me. So I'd certainly consider looking at that. You might find something that works for you. So just click in the description below is a link to my Patreon. In my banner is also a link to my Patreon. That might be something that you might consider doing if it might be helpful. But yeah, I would probably remove the yellowing leaves because they're probably on their way out. But again, like I said, it depends. Is it just a small yellow patch? If it is, then maybe you might want to just leave it because the plant is acclimating. But again, I really can't tell because I don't have a plant in front of me. I transferred my Fiddle Leaf fig to Leca and I'm so disappointed. Help! The leaves are covered in brown spots. That is not good. That is not good. I've got my fiddles here. This is my normal fiddle, and this next to me over here is my bambino. And it's not so bambino. It's really quite big. It's the plant it's the bambino that keeps on growing. But I'm showing them to you because it's possible. They just look so lovely in Leca, and I've never had such success with fiddles as I have when I put them in Leca. So not sure what's going on with your plant without actually taking a look. I would be evaluating what's the lighting situation for your plants. Fiddle leaf figs enjoy some good light. What nutrition are you using for your plants? How did you transition it from soil to Leca? These are all things I'd be wanting to know before I'd actually give you an opinion. But more importantly, I would really love to see the plant. It's really the only way I can sort of make an opinion as to what's happening. This is a situation where looking at the plant is something I would need to do in order for me to give you a more informed opinion. So maybe it's worth thinking about a more personalized option for people who want to ask me specific questions about their plants. What do you think about this? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really interested to see what kind of service you think would work for you guys. Next question. Can you recommend a brand of moss, sphagnum moss in the US that's comparable to what you use? Unfortunately, I cannot. I have no idea what kind of sphagnum moss you have in the US. It's been really hard. I've been looking for some on Amazon, trying to get some comparisons, but it's really, really difficult. So what I will say is, let's do this. Those of you who've made a moss poll outside of Australia, please let me know in the comments below where you got your moss, how much it cost, what the brand of your moss is, and then I'll create a little directory, country-specific directory about moss, just like the one I made for a plastic sheet back moss poll, and maybe that will help a lot more people out there. Please, 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 I can't do this without you. Please let me know in the comments below and we can help other people out. Thank you. Next question. Do your huge plants, which are staked up on a moss pole, usually get root bound? I have a Monstera deliciosa that only has 2 leaves, but already requires a 20 centimeter pot. Yes, they do. Not so much, but they definitely do, because a 20 centimeter pot is pretty big. And I'd probably only be worried so much about root growth like that from Monsteras, because Monsteras do love to proliferate their roots. And if you take a look at the video above, I've got a video where I show the roots of my Monstera type constellation. They're just completely overgrown, growing insane in a 14 centimeter pot. And I move it from a 14 centimeter pot to, I think, a 17 centimeter pot. But while I do that, I actually trim off the roots. Take a look at that video and see what you think. It did freak out a lot of people when I was cutting those roots, but the plant is fine. It's doing fine. It's loving life. And this is it here. There was no plant that was harmed in the filming of that video. So sometimes giving your plant roots a trim is certainly a way to go, because you can't keep upgrading pots. I mean, we're next from 20 to 40 to 60 now. So if the roots are just going insane, it's sometimes helpful to just trim them off a bit and the plant will love you for it. Do you ever have trouble with insects falling and drowning in your reservoir? I live in a tropical climate and I see a bunch of insects floating all the time. That is so funny. So I've got my reservoirs here and they're quite open. So yes, insects would go in there. I have to say, no, that's not really a problem I have, because all my plants are indoors. I don't have any of my Leca plants outside. All my plants are indoors, and we live in Australia. It's quite a buggy place. And so I like to try and keep all the bugs outside, if you know what I mean. I do not like bugs. My family do not like bugs. That's one of the reasons why I started using Leca, actually. Everyone in my house was fed up of fungus gnats. So I had to use Leca, and since then they all just love it, except they hate stepping on the Leca when it's on the floor, but that's a whole other problem. But yeah, no, that's not an issue I have, no. And good luck to you and your floating bugs. On that buggy note, that's the end of this week's Q&A. That was quite a marathon to film, I have to tell you. That was a lot of very deep questions. Thank you so much for everyone who put a question in. Please don't forget that on Monday, I've got the Q&A post up in my community tab. Just take a look at this, and that's how you get to my community tab. Make sure you put your questions in, and I might be answering that on the next video. But again, thank you so much for putting the questions in. These questions are not so much as me talking at you. I learned so much, so I really, really do appreciate it. So on that note, I will say goodbye. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you. Goodbye.